Just a few short years ago, to get anything near the performance of this Kia EV6 GT, you would have had to get something like a Porsche, Ferrari, or Lamborghini. But those days are over as blistering affordable performance goes mainstream. Kia's top-of-the-line EV6 GT is classified as an SUV, but what it really is an all-wheel drive hot hatch on steroids that will run rings around many of its gas-powered counterparts. Consider for a minute that the EV6 GT beat a 2021 Ferrari Roma and 2020 rear-wheel drive Lamborghini Huracan Evo Spider in an AMCI certified 0-60 race at 3.4 seconds. Car and Driver managed to do even better, clocking a 3.2 0-60 run with the EV6 GT. Automotive Addicts publisher Malcolm Hogan was impressed during his week with the EV6 GT.
I think it rides good and it handles well for as much performance as it has. You know, out of all the EVs I've driven, this is one of the ones that are some more of a cohesive package. You know, it handles well, drives well, it's easily adaptable to you know, imperfections in the road, and on top of that, you got 576 horsepower as well to work with.
Driving the EV6 GT is a very refined experience. It starts with the adaptive suspension. The dampers do adjust depending on what mode that you're in. So if you're in the Sport and the GT mode, you're going to have a much firmer ride, which of course is going to give you nice flat cornering. I think one of the things that Kia really got right is the adaptive regen that the Kia EV6 GT has. So many EVs, you get a choice. Either your regen is on or your regen is off. But with the EV6 GT, you have paddles and you have them on the right and the left. So if I want to, quote, downshift, in other words, give myself more regen, I go ahead and I use the left paddle. Instead, if I want to go up and get less regen, I use the right paddle. So I find that to be very intuitive, and it makes it feel much more like a traditional sports car than just a bland EV thanks to those paddles. You know, performance is going to be a recurring theme of this video because after all, that's what the EV6 GT is all about. So for example, 8 seconds is the quoted time to go 0 to 100 miles per hour in a Kia of all things. Now, despite the weight of this car, the braking is still very impressive. In fact, Kia says you can go from 70 to 0 in 159 feet, which for a car this heavy is darn impressive. All that performance really does come at a big cost though, and that is range. So right now, I'm in the normal mode, and the Kia EV6 GT thinks I have 114 miles of range, but I've still got 59% of charge. Now here's the thing, if I put it in GT mode, it drops all the way down to 106 miles. But when I get on the highway, oh my goodness, that acceleration is really something. I don't know if the microphone can pick it up, but you do get interesting sound effects with the Kia. So if I floor it, you'll hear it. The heads-up display in the EV6 GT is one of the best I've ever experienced. What I really like about it is the useful information that it gives me. So for example, a car is coming up on my left in my blind spot. Now, the heads-up display is showing me that I've got a blind spot. It's giving me a triangle and it's giving me some information to let me know that a car is coming through. And that occurs at all 4 corners of the car. Another great thing about the way Kia set this up, it takes full advantage of the mirror cameras, which I don't know why, but a lot of EVs don't. So for example, most EVs that have cameras in the mirrors, they'll give you a 360-degree view when you're backing up, which is great. But what they don't do, at least most of them, they don't give you a view when you put on your turn signals in the dash. But the Kia does. So it gives you yet another way to see the traffic that you may or may not see in your side view mirror. So it's a great safety feature. Like so many cars today, the Kia EV6 GT does have some degree of self-driving when you're on the interstate. Like many cars, it does have adaptive cruise control, so it will speed up and slow down. It also does have steering assist. It'll keep you in your lanes, and it will go through those sweepers. But where it does differ from some of the cars is that it will tell you to put your hand back on the wheel occasionally. So, for example, unlike Ford and GM that have eye tracking that allow you to go indefinitely without touching the steering wheel, in the GT, you will need to put your hand back on. But it is an easy system to use. There's just 2 buttons to hit. And once I do that, I'm hands-free. Right now I'm on Jacksonville's Interstate I-295, and I-295 is a pretty good road, but it definitely has some bumps here and there. And I will say that the EV6 GT is handling everything very nicely in its standard mode. It's not stiff, bouncing me around. It's a nice compliant ride. And again, I'm in the normal mode right now. I'm really enjoying how much character the EV6 GT has. And what I mean by character is because of the different drive modes and how the suspension and the acceleration changes. I've got a gentle car here in the city right now on stop and go traffic, but when I am able to go ahead and take advantage of that extra power, it really jumps too. And with the paddles on top of that, it makes me feel like I'm in a sports car, even though it's classified as an SUV. The EV6 GT is proving that moving to electric doesn't mean giving up the fun that we've come to expect in performance cars. Even though the EV6 GT is fast as all get out, it still makes a nice daily driver in stop and go city traffic. Right now I'm in the self-driving mode, and we're going 45 miles per hour, and it's doing a good job. I can see everything I need in both the heads-up display and the dashboard, which is really nice. We're going through a gentle sweeping curve right now, and the car's holding it, no problem. But what I will say, on sharper curves on the interstate, I have noticed it will go ahead and cross the line. So gentle curves, no problem, does well, as you can see right now. But this is not, from what I can tell, a car you, for example, would be able to do something like this on a curvy mountain road. It's more for interstates and gentle curves. You know, I've been very fortunate to drive quite a few EVs in the last year. Everything from a Model S Plaid to a Mustang GTP and several things in between, from Volvo, from Mini, electric motorcycles from Zero and Energica. But in terms of a very balanced package and cost, once you figure it all in together, this might actually be the best EV I've driven, including comparing it directly to the car I purchased, which is a Ford Mustang Mach-E Premium all-wheel drive. This one, of course, is quicker because it's a trim level, well, it's 2 trim levels up from the equivalent Mustang that I have. I would say the suspension feels better. I would say the direct drive feels a little better than the Mach-E. And that's not a knock on the Mach-E, by the way. It's a great car, and I continue to love it, but it just goes to show how quickly the bar is being raised in the EV space as all the automakers come out with clean sheet designs. Now, this car is based on the same platform as some sister automobiles, namely the Genesis GV60 and the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and 6. Now, I've been able to drive the Ioniq 5 and the Genesis. This is quicker than either one. One of my favorite features of the EV6 GT is its ability to act as a generator to power other things like a refrigerator, an air conditioner, lights, or even another EV in terms of recharging it. It's really easy. All you do, you open your charging hatch and then you just go ahead and you plug it right in and turn it on. Next, you can take the other EV's charging cable and just plug it right in. Now you're ready to charge your other EV. So all we got to do is walk over and plug it in. And I can see it's already charging. So if for any reason you had a friend in need that had run low on a charge and wasn't near home or a charging station, you could actually go over and help them out. Moving to the interior, one of the EV6's most unusual features is its dual-function haptic feedback and knobs. They handle the climate controls, but with a touch, change to instead control the radio volume and media. I found it a little confusing in my limited time with the GT, but I can see how after a few days it would seem intuitive. Here's Malcolm's take on the control center.
So I think things are laid out very well. You know, we've got the same Kia, Hyundai branding as far as the infotainment system goes. That's always been one of my favorite systems out of the automotive market right now. It's very straightforward, user-friendly, and once you live with it for a while, it becomes even more straightforward.
I agree with Malcolm's assessment, although one thing I do miss as compared to its Genesis GV60 corporate cousin are the redundant physical controls provided by the GV60's jog wheel and physical buttons. The EV6 GT's upgraded interior includes heavier bolstering along the seats, which suits me just fine. I found them to be very comfortable, and of course that helps also when you're going around the corners. Now, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go on a trip of several hundred miles with the EV6 GT, but I can tell you in my driving around town today, I have found these seats very comfortable. I'm really enjoying the extra bolstering that the seats are giving me. However, seats are highly personal. For example, seats that I find comfortable, my wife often finds uncomfortable. So what I would say in terms of comfort, if that is going to be the deciding factor for you, you definitely would want to go ahead and compare the regular seats and the other trim levels to this seat, because it will be a different experience. And depending on what your body type is, you may find the bolstering in these seats to be a little off-putting. From a utility standpoint, the EV6 GT does include a very small frunk, along with plenty of storage space and fold-down seats out back. So I pulled into a local CCS EV Go fast charge station here in Jacksonville to recharge the GT, and I got to tell you, it seems to have a really strange charging curve. So it started out at 38 kilowatts almost immediately, but it stayed there. Once it hit about 59%, all of a sudden it jumped up to 190 plus and then peaked at 195 kilowatts. And now that it's up to 75%, the speed is coming back down. It's currently at 132, but I wouldn't have expected that charging curve. I would have expected that peak right at the beginning, and then I would have expected it to come down. And it actually is quite far off the advertised peak of 240. However, what I don't know is whether that might be due to the charging station as opposed to the car. When it comes right down to it, would I personally buy an EV6 GT? Actually, no. What I would get is the GT line, which is one grade below this one. Still gives you all-wheel drive, still gives you a pretty good kick in the pants, but it gives you better range. The other thing it gives you is power seats, which you don't get in this car. And perhaps most importantly, it keeps some of the top trim items such as the sunroof and the heated steering wheel, which the lower trims don't have. Another thing about the EV6 GT that's kind of surprising to me is its classification as a SUV. The style just doesn't scream SUV, it screams hot hatch, which I see as a good thing, because it still has all-wheel drive for you folks that have to deal with snow. It still has a tow rating for those folks that want to tow relatively light, things like jet skis or a motorcycle. The idea that a car with this much style And this much performance can still be so practical as a daily driver is very appealing. If you've enjoyed this episode of EV Rider, please give it a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can bring you more adventures in EV motoring.